Hi everyone, I'm Mary Annarella of LRincr Knits, and I've put together this tutorial to show you how to work the lifted increase that the sweater Silver White Winters calls for. I'm also using this particular type of increase in a hat pattern that's very similar. So I actually have some hat ribbing that's on my needles right now. This is not a sweater. It would be a really tiny sweater before a baby. But I'm using the same exact lifted right increase for this particular pattern. So I thought I would show you this. It's a really useful type of increase. Unlike the make one increase where you would lift the running thread between two stitches up onto the left hand stitch and then like into the back loop or something like that, depending on which way you want to twist it. The lifted increase is actually going to come from the stitch below. So I've worked up to the point in my pattern where I need to do the left right increase, knit one. Now to do that, you need to take a look at the next stitch that's on the needle. So here's our next stitch. If we wanted to knit it, we would just go ahead and do that. But before we do that, the lifted increase means that I need to lift up the stitch below. So this stitch that's below the next stitch is right here, right? So here's our right leg of that stitch, and way over here is where my thumb is right now, is the left leg of that stitch. We want to pull up the right leg and put it onto the left needle like that. Okay, now the temptation here is going to be to just knit them both together. You don't want to do that, so I'm going to use my fingernail here to just kind of pull those stitches apart, and now we'll knit that left leg from the stitch below, and now I'll come back and knit that regular stitch. And I'll take a look at that. We basically have a couple of stitches from this one stitch down here. I know it looks like a bit of a hole right now, but that's because it's the last stitch on my right needle. So that hole will close up pretty easily. So for this hat pattern, and I don't have a name for the hat yet, you only increase every other knit stitch there. So I've worked back up to the spot where I need to work another lifted right increase. So I will pull up the right leg of this stitch right here and put it onto my left needle. And because this pattern, for this pattern, I am carrying two different yarns at the same time, so I have to be careful that I pick up both strands of that yarn. It gets easier as you go along, but now I'm going to knit it and knit the regular stitch. So now we again have two stitches from one, and I know it looks like there's a big hole there, but it really is going to close up as we get into the pattern a little bit more. So once you get really good at this particular increase, you may not even need to lift up that stitch and put it on the left-hand needle anymore. I just kind of dig in and find it. I come in and I insert my right needle from back to front through the stitch that I would normally knit next, but then I'm going to go back down and grab the loop from the stitch below and knit it that way, and then knit the regular stitch. So that's another way to do that. Now this is actually called the lifted right increase because you're knitting into the right leg of this stitch below. There actually is a lifted left increase. The pattern does not call for this, and for this particular pattern, they would be somewhat identical, but in case you're interested to do a left increase, you would just knit the stitch, and now you would insert your left needle back to front through the stitch below the one you just knit and pull that out and knit into it. There you go. It still looks like there's a little bit of a hole there, but maybe a little less so, but honestly, I don't see a difference once we get into the fabric. So, I mean, I'm just gonna leave that in. But because the pattern calls for the lifted right increase, I'm gonna do it that way. Again, you just lift up that stitch that's below the stitch that's next on your left-hand needle, put it back on your left-hand needle, hold them apart so that you don't knit them together. Knit that stitch that you lifted. That's why it's called a lifted increase. And then knit the next stitch. It's a really handy increase. It looks almost invisible and you don't get a little nub the way you do with, say, a knit through the front and the back loop type of increase. And it's also very symmetrical, so it looks like two stitches. Take a look at this again. Let's find one right here. It looks like two stitches coming out of one. So I think it just looks better as we transition into the cable for this particular pattern, which again, this is the lifted right increase for the sweater pattern Silver White Winters, and also this hat pattern that I'm going to be working on, but I don't have a name for it. Something that actually does have a name now is the yarn that I am working with. This is a collaboration with Miss Babs Yarn. And for this project, I am holding these yarns double right here. So they're already double. Oh, see if I can pry them apart. Of course I can't, because I want to show you. There we go. Okay, so I'm holding one strand of sock yarn, and this is their, up here, is their Tarte, T-A-R-T-E. Tarte is not a high twist sock yarn. It's got a teeny bit of tencel to it. So it's tencel, but it's mostly merino wool, and it's got 500 yards per 100 grams, I think so. The yardage is incredible. This carry-along right here is a lace weight mohair silk lace weight yarn that they are about to release very, very soon, and it's called Moon Glow. I really enjoyed knitting with it, and I hope you enjoy knitting with it as well, and I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial for the lifted right increase. Have a great... Hello knitters, I'm Mary Annarella of LRincr Knits, and this is a tutorial to show you how to work the left cross and right cross 6-stitch cables in Silver White Winters. Now, Silver White Winters is a sweater pattern, and what I have here on the needles is actually a hat that I am working up with the same cables, so I thought I would do a little tutorial to show you how to work those cables. The first up is the 222 left cross. Okay, it is a 6-stitch cable, and so it's worked over these 6 stitches right here. So this is actually the last time I'm going to be making this cable in this particular round. So I thought I'd show you that. Like I said, this is a hat that I have on the needles here, not a sweater. It would have to be a baby sweater at this size, but it uses the same exact cable pattern. So the instructions say to slip the next 3 stitches on the left needle onto a cable needle, and I am just using a simple double-pointed needle here as my cable needle because it just works out really well for me that way. So I'm just going to put 1, 2, the next 3 stitches onto that cable needle and hold it to the front. Because this is a left cross cable, we have to hold the stitches to the front. And then what we do next is, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and then return to the stitches that are on the cable needle, and you knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 from the cable needle. So this is actually pretty easy to do. I just move it this way and go knit 1, purl 1. This is really kind of funky to do when this cable is easier to do than what I'm showing you right now because it's just kind of funny. I don't know whether or not I should look at the camera up above or if I should just be looking at my work, but there we go. Now we have our left twist cable right there. Now I wanted to show you something, and this is why I waited until the last cable of the round, but let me go ahead and work up to the end of the round. So we have knit, purl, knit, knit. There we go. I'll slip my marker. Oh, look how cute this little marker is. It's a tiny little sheep. I think I got these at Vogue Knitting Live last year. Wee Ones, Weeones is the name of the shop, and these little markers are so cute. Anywho, that was just an aside. Now I'm just going to work in pattern, knit the knits, purl the purls for what, nine more rounds. And so, but I want to show you the rhythm of this. Okay, it's pretty obvious that that was a purl stitch, so we'll purl it. But off of the cable here, we want to knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit. And what I find is that it's really tempting to just go knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and that's not right. We actually have a column of 2 knit stitches that are right in the center of this here, so you have to be careful not to do that. So what I do is I just kind of chant a little pattern to myself, you know, like 1 by 1 ribbing would be knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. 2 by 2 ribbing would be knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl. Well, this is purl, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, knit. And that kind of gives me a little rhythm there, because otherwise I have to look at my knitting too much. But again, if I don't chant that, what I'm tempted to do on this first row or round after cabling is that I'll see the cable and go, oh, that's a knit. Oh, look, that's a purl. That's a knit. I'll purl this next stitch. Nope, don't do that. It's knit, purl, knit, 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 purl, knit, like that. So again, the whole chant would, if you take a look at the cable here, it's purl, knit, knit. Wait, I guess we have to stop. How do I get into my rhythm here? Knit, knit. There we go. So starting at the purl stitch, starting at the purl stitch that's before the cable, it's purl, knit, knit. Purl, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, purl, and then it's obvious that these next 2 are knit, knits. I split my yarn there. Knit, knit. And again, one more time, purl, knit, purl, knit, knit. And see, we're not even through that cable yet when we start the purl, knit, purl, knit, knit. Okay, and I'll be right back to show you how to do the right cross cable. Alrighty, so I have worked up to the point where I need to start doing the right cross cables, and if you're actually working this hat pattern, I've moved the stitch marker. If you're working the Silver White Winters sweater, that you don't have to worry about that. It's not in your directions or anything. So we're ready to work the right cross cable. So what we have to do, the instructions say to take the next 3 stitches on the left needle and move them to the cable needle. And again, I am just using this handy dandy double point needle. So I'll put 1, 2, 3 stitches onto the cable needle and hold them to the back. So we're not holding them to the front this time, we are holding them to the back. They're nice and out of the way. And then we knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 off of the left hand needle. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and now we knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 off of the cable needle, which is kind of hard to do when you're trying to film yourself doing this, but I think I got this. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 right off of that cable needle. There we go. And now I'm just going to work up to the next Oops, yeah, that's right. Work up to the next cable that I'm gonna do. There we go. Now let's show you again, and this time I'll show you a slightly different twist. Take the next 3 stitches on the left-hand needle and move them to the cable needle. There we go, all 3, I just slipped them on there all at once. Hold them to the back, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, off of the left-hand needle, and now we need to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 off of the cable needle. But you know what? That's really kind of, the ergonomics of this is kind of a pain in the butt. I'll zoom out a little bit for you. Sometimes, and you may find it easier, you may not, but you may find it easier to slip these stitches one by one back onto the left-hand needle like that. And knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 that way. You may find it easier. Sometimes I do find that easier. Sometimes I don't. I don't know. It depends on my mood. But I just wanted to let you know that you had that option for working this cable. There we go. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. Please hit subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me, or subscribe to my newsletter, which is also linked down in the description. And I hope you're enjoying Silver White Winters very much. Have a great day.